Welcome back to Rex Arthur TV. This is the Rex Arthur Show where we discuss LGBTQ issues with an LGBTQ perspective and an LGBTQ approach and a humanistic approach in the LGBTQ plus planet, where we are all humans and we are celebrating the UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Our Rights, human rights, that is now 70 years old. And now we are going to Article 4 that bans slavery. Now, banning of slavery is in Article 4, and no one, and that means no one, shall be held, and it shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Now, sadly, every time we're reading these articles, you've got to understand that the UDHR is not a legally binding document. And because of that, it is an illusion. Yes, it is not real, because in reality, there are some countries that still go on doing slavery. However, let's not paint a dark picture. On the positive side, most countries that used to have slaves have banned slavery. And right now, education is what's saving people, because when you have educated people in the population, they can report when slavery is happening. So let's go on to more on the ban on slavery. Now, the right is enshrined in Article 8 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So they have banned slavery, they have banned slave trade, they have banned servitude, they have banned forced or compulsory labor, they have banned any service in cases of emergency or calamity threatening the life or well-being of the community. They have banned any work or service which form parts of normal. Oh, sorry. This, it does not include the ban on forced or compulsory labor. Shall not include work that is done under the order of a court. It shall not include work of a military character, and it shall not be considered forced labor when it is to save the well-being of the community, and it shall not be called forced labor when it is part of civil obligations, like what happens in Rwanda. You cannot take Rwanda to court for telling people to go and sweep the cities and the towns on Saturday. That's their culture. It's an order from the government that to keep clean, there'll be community service. Everybody should be involved in community. Everybody in Rwanda. And that's what happens. So, if you have a dirty lawyer who is running to say, we want to sue Rwanda, our country is forcing us to work, and it's wrong, it's forced labor. It's not forced labor, because the government is the one that has made it a civil obligation for the people of the country to clean where they live. All right. And another document that enshrines Article 4 is International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of their Families. And again, slavery is also banned, servitude is also banned, forced labor is also banned, and again, we have already defined what forced labor is, and it's the same repeat as the other one. And the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities has also protected disabled people from slavery. By the way, have you noticed it's very easy to use disabled people as slaves? Yes, there are some people who even use the disability of people to make money. That is slavery, because that person didn't choose to have the disability. So you cannot use him for that. And so this is a very meaty discussion, and it's understandable, because disabled persons can be misused because they're disabled and there's nothing they can do. And so there's no discrimination on the basis of disability, and you protect the rights of the disabled and give them favorable conditions of working, including equal opportunities, equal remuneration, Yes, they should be paid equally the same with able people. Don't pay somebody less because he's disabled. And ensure reasonable accommodation for them, provide a lot of work for them, and provide, a lot of good working conditions. Okay. And this right is also contained in the African Charter on Human Rights and People's Rights. Every individual shall have the right to respect of the dignity inherent in a human being and to the recognition of his legal status. All forms of exploitation and degradation of man, particularly slavery, slave trade, torture, cruel, inhumane, human or degrading punishment and treatment shall be prohibited. I love this article in the African Charter because Africa has a long history of slave trade. Contrary to the belief of very many people, the white slave traders actually got slaves from African slave traders, black, because Africa was filled with kingdoms, and in kingdoms you have slaves. So what used to happen is these white slave traders would come to the African coasts and buy slaves from black slave traders who used to go inland to get slaves and bring them to the coast. Most of these white slave traders never even went inland. They just they had ships. So they come and they go and buy the black people on the shipyard. You remember when Obama went to Ghana with his wife, they went to the fort where the slaves were kept, and the fort is by the sea. So the reason why it was by the sea, most of these whites could not go inland because it was very, very tough in the sense that they don't know the place, they didn't know the terrain. So, and then there were black kingdoms, these black kingdoms were protecting their territories. So even the whites were seen as enemies. But the only thing they could do was to trade with them. So the markets were on the coastline of most African countries that are on the seashore. That's why you find most slaves that are living in South America and America, descendants of slaves living in America and South America and the Caribbean, their ancestors came from countries that had coastlines. Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia, all of these countries, they have coastlines. So that whole coastline is where ships used to go and park and get humans and take them for. And remember, not all of them got to Americas. They drowned. So when you go to the Atlantic Ocean is filled with corpses of black people that are down underground. Actually, they have never done proper excavation to find out the bodies that are still there. And someone could say Bermuda Triangle could be, I'm trying to be a bit mystical, so forgive me, and maybe some superstition. Bermuda Triangle could be a place that is sapping people. And it could be the black people who died there, who drowned there. Who knows? There could be a ship in that Atlantic Ocean. So basically, the Atlantic Ocean has very many corpses that either have been eaten by sharks or have been made part of the ocean. And that's the beauty of understanding. The beauty of understanding ship travel is that there are ships that sank, and they sank with people, because the problem was the ships were so crammed up with humans, and they were being taken for. It was so cramped up. These humans were, if you've seen the pictures of the ship, put like logs. It was sad. And so it's very good to see Africans stand up against slavery and slave trade, because they could do it. Right now, what happens in Africa is brain drain. But the beauty of brain drain is that it's voluntary. You're the one who is taking yourself to another country. You're not being sold. Because brain drain would have been bad if your country is selling you to another country. But brain drain is not bad when you voluntarily leave the country because you are not being valued by the economy you live in. So that's why very many Africans have left Africa because they are going to work in the Western world and maybe even Asia. But it's on their, what's important is they have voluntarily chosen to leave Africa to go and work abroad. That's why all these refugees who are in Europe and are from Africa, they are really going there because they are using their freedom of movement, the freedom of movement right to get there. All right. Thank you so much for joining us under this one. This Article 4 that bans slavery.